Halo Infinite comes out today, and I'm probably running around on Zeta Halo right now. I'm planning to do a full-length critique of the game, and if all goes according to plan, will be released sometime in January. It's going to be the biggest project I have ever attempted, but first I wanted to admit the futility of the act. While I'm sure I will have a lot of positive things to say about Infinite, my guess is that most of the video's runtime will be filled with criticism. I've been grappling with the idea of why I even do this. Why do I sit around criticizing games that I love? Why do I always sound so negative about video games despite me enjoying them more than pretty much anything else? What is the point of it all? I think when it comes down to it, I just love discussing video games. I find enjoyment in discovering what makes a game tick, and why some games pull me in more than others. I enjoy hearing about what other people like about games and how our opinions can differ so vastly. A great example is something like the Uncharted series. I'll be honest, I don't think the Uncharted games are all that in a bag of chips. While Uncharted 4 was my favorite, I found the experience of its gameplay to be middling at best. I enjoyed the characters, and while the story has its problems, I was invested in seeing what happened. Yet all I ever hear about is how amazing the games are. People fawning over them and calling them more notable games like Among Thieves and A Thief's End, two of the best games ever made. At first, I thought that people just had bad taste and that I was a video game intellectual. Then I realized not only does that make me sound like a pretentious prick, it's also not true, as I have 70 hours in Fallout 76, and will genuinely go to bat for that game despite its, faults, to put it lightly. I realized that a lot of the appeal of Uncharted is in how cinematic it is. People love it for the characters, the story, and the feeling of being the main character in a Hollywood blockbuster. Scenes like the opening of Among Thieves give off a sense of scale and danger, while in terms of gameplay offer very little. I have come to the conclusion that I just don't care too much for spectacle. I have come around to see that it isn't an entirely useless thing to have, but when it feels like the focus, I'm thoroughly uninterested. I'm a gameplay, story, and exploration-focused gamer, and that is reflected in my favorite games of all time. While I don't care much for games focused on spectacle, I can understand why so many do. While I consider myself a game critic and someone who has a pretty decent grasp on game design, I am first and foremost a gamer, someone who has always and will always play for the love of the game. Even in games that are less than stellar, I want to find out what other people love about them and learning how to appreciate that as well. There are still times where I can't fully appreciate games as much as others, the most notable example for me being 2018's God of War. But I want to try. I don't want to be a negative person. I want to be a person who talks about games they are passionate about, and sometimes that requires me to be critical. Before Halo Infinite becomes the only game on my mind for a while, I wanted to talk about another game that is infinite. Bioshock Infinite is a game that I could, and probably will someday, write an entire hour-plus long critique on. There are so many issues with this game. The story is filled with plot holes, the gameplay is a step down from previous titles, it's extremely linear, whereas Bioshock is known for its open and varied level design. Trust me when I say I could talk your ear off about all of this stuff. I recently revisited the game and I found myself enjoying it quite a bit. Why was this? I could spend so much time criticizing it, but at the end of the day, I enjoy the game. I've come to accept that this is just a contradiction I will need to live with. In order to share my passion and love for video games, I feel the need to dive deep into their design and construction. I feel the need to break down what games do well and what they do poorly. It is part of the fun of gaming for me. It's not about being a snobby critic with self-righteous intent. It's about the love of the game. It's about discussion. It's about enjoyment. So the back end of this video will just be kind of a love letter to Bioshock Infinite. I played this game right after I played the first game. At the time I was 15 and in a single player kit. Over the course of a couple weeks, I played Dishonored, Skyrim, Bioshock, Far Cry 3, and finally Bioshock Infinite not long after its release. When being catapulted into the sky to gently float through the world of Columbia, I remember feeling the same sense of wonder that I did when sinking into the world of Bioshock or exiting the tutorial cave in the opening of Skyrim. The world immediately captivated me, and I was excited to explore all of it. I walked around in these opening sections, checking every nook and cranny, getting a true feel for the fantastical city in the clouds I had just stepped into. I remember stopping to listen to the quartet and just kind of closing my eyes and swaying back and forth while they performed their song God Only Knows. I'll make you so sure about it.
only knows what I'd be without you.
I still listen to this song to this day, and when I came across it on YouTube a few weeks ago, it launched me into replaying the game, and in turn, the inspiration for this video. While nowadays I find it to be a little more tame than I would like, the depiction of racism was shocking as a teenager. The most notable scene for me was during the Hall of Heroes. The depiction of Native Americans and Chinese people was disgusting, but it never felt overdone. One look at Nazi propaganda about Jewish people, and you can see how all this dehumanization was all too common. It's shameful to see it in Colombia, but when you relate it to how down below in 1912 America things probably weren't much better, the horrific effects of racism start to set in. The point of this museum was to honor people who were murderers and conquerors. Depicting Native Americans as brutal savages when the colonists were the ones taking their land and slaughtering their people is prime propaganda. Same with the Chinese being depicted with their racial traits being exaggerated to make them look devilish, when the Boxer Rebellion was just Chinese people revolting against the imperialists attempting to take Chinese land and Chinese resources. It taught me some valuable lessons in propaganda that I didn't quite fully grasp from a classroom textbook. It felt more realistic that people would believe in this nonsense when it's all you've been taught and shown. The story in Bioshock Infinite is a big, confusing mess of ideas that makes little sense when laid out. If you want a video deconstructing the story, Matthew Matos's Bioshock Infinite critique is a must-watch. I realize now that the story I considered to be amazing was mostly due to a lack of understanding on my part. However, there are still parts of Bioshock Infinite's story that I adore, most notably the reveal of Rapture during the game's final hour. I remembered not moving my controller thinking I was in a cutscene, and as Songbird sunk away into the depths of the water and the city began to come into view in the background, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and claimed to all my friends that it was the best game ever made, almost specifically for this moment. All the time shenanigans near the end of the game gave off the appearance of being deep, and I remember initially loving the ending of the game. I have come to find it disappointing nowadays, but something about that first time through sticks with me whenever I revisit it. The final thing to discuss is the imagery and style of Columbia. While I'm not a very religious person, I love both religious imagery and music. There is a mystical beauty to Columbia, and it's only enhanced by the bells of a church or the song of a choir. It can really feel like heaven at times, especially during the opening before the horrors of the city's dark underbelly are revealed to you. It's one of those games that I feel you can show anybody and it will captivate their imagination. Bioshock Infinite clearly isn't a perfect game by any metric, and I wouldn't put it anywhere close to my favorite games of all time, but it does hold a special place in my heart. It stands as a constant reminder that before I am a critic, I am a gamer. At the end of the day, the main reason I play games isn't to sit around and discuss their faults, but to get the feeling of playing something truly special for the first time. While I will continue to post these videos and discuss the successes and failings of games, I know what I truly crave is to have a game make me feel something. Now, I venture forth into the world of Zeta Halo. With Halo being my favorite game series of all time, I hope I get the same overwhelming sense of joy I got my first time through Bioshock Infinite. Wish me luck.
Will the circle be unbroken by and by, is a better